It's that time again. It's our monthly Facebook Live. I'm Joan Graci from APA Solutions. My strategic partner, Neilans. I'm not going to lie, I'm missing the bow ties. He's been bow tie. Isn't it back to school?
It is back to school.
Well, then where's the damn tie?
It's so warm outside. It would be so... Talk about the impact of stress, I'm thinking, the impact of heat.
Oh, okay, all right. So we're always here on approximately the third Thursday of every month, talking people, talking human capital, talking merging data with what we've been able to see in the workplace community. So Eric coming from the university Ph.D. type of space, me coming more from living it, being involved with organizations from recruiting to retention to development, seeking answers. And what I'm consistently amazed about is how uncomfortable, and no matter, I think probably this statement was one of the movie lines that have resonated with me the most when Jack Nicklaus said in A Few Good Men, "You can't take the truth." I mean, I've seen that at the theater like 50 times because all I want to do is hear the guy say that.
Right.
So how many organizations come and have a particular problem and want to know the results of why this is happening? And we can definitely trace it back neurologically to how this command center is built, how it interprets information, how it retrieves information.
Right.
The relationship between all of those great things, yet it's so darn difficult to accept because we've been so used to the sauce, but never really looking at the soup. Why does it all come together in this manner?
I know. Oh, I think it's similar to, this time of year when people might be getting their yearly checkup or whatever it might be. It's the
Talked
same.
about that last month, yeah.
Right. The same fear that someone might have about going because what's the bad news that could happen? What's my cholesterol? What's my blood pressure? But without knowing that, think of the impact that that's having on your life. Certainly speaking to something that we talked about last time when we had the opportunity to talk. And that's kind of where I thought, we had some nice questions for today, which was really looking at as a self-reflection.
Right.
Where are you in the workplace?
Well, I think subliminally what we try to do is instead of saying, what a shame that you don't bring data into this community. Because from an external sales customer standpoint, all we look at is, what's our sales volume? How much did you sell? What product did you move? We're always looking at the sales component of it. And even though employees are 70% of our operating expense, we don't want to look at the cost of people lost through disengagement, through turnover, whatever the case may be. So subliminally, what you and I craft is we craft these subject matters that merge those two entities together with the sincere hope that somebody's going to start to say, wait a minute, this is based on something that we can measure? Yes.
Right.
And the best place to work distinction is something that I hear all the time when people bring me in for coaching. They say, oh, we'd love to be a best place to work,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But it's interesting because when you really pull that apart, a lot of people that I speak to in companies are like, that's just touchy-feely. Like that best place to work thing, it's a nice honor, it's a nice distinction. But it's really based on fluff. When you and I both know that when you look at the social order of the brain or the nutrition that it takes to get a person engaged in the workforce naturally and organically each day, it's in direct alignment with this best place to work.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to, send kudos out to the people who took the survey.
Yeah, quite a few.
Yeah, that answered these, how many questions?
There were 18 questions.
18 questions, 18 questions. And then, they have that in front of them and they could see if their company sucks or
right, I call it
and that's my
yeah.
and that's my business part. Now you will say something a lot more eloquent from the university sector, but in business I say it sucks to work there, and you have a whole different definition, but that's why we're good together. So the fact of the matter is we looked at the individuals. They have their information around these particular questions, and understanding that a best place to work is in direct correlation to a more profitable business.
Right.
It's great to be at a best place to work, but from an owner standpoint, from a leader standpoint, best place to work, companies are more profitable, hands down.
Right.
And in some cases, 2 to 3 times more profitable than companies that aren't a best place to work. So again, there's something to be said for what these organizations do. So Eric always does work separate than I do because we worry about bias and stereotypes and all those hiccups that we have going on neurologically. So why did you pick those first 3 questions? What was it about those that you were like, okay, we got to start with these?
Well, I think the first 3 are really fascinating because, like you said, as an employer or as someone who owns a company, I'm always worried about the sales margin. I'm always worried about what am I pushing for that particular day, and I might not then think of the internal customer that I have in my company. Yet, when we look at the impact of retention or turnover, we see that companies that are boggled with that are spending so much time, energy, resources trying to now refill those positions that they don't have an opportunity to catch back up to the ever-changing industry that the world now lives in. And you can see those that with high engagement, high retention, are able to now overcome challenges, they can pivot. And that's why I really like this first question here, and that when we now think of in the last 12 months, did the organization have any difficulty with turnover? And if so, think of now the long-term impacts that that can have. And so here, I equally weighted all the questions, and for those that are listening to us now or afterwards, there is a scoring rubric or a sheet.
We're having some technical difficulties with that.
Hopefully will be posted soon, but it'll be posted as soon as possible. And as we're going through these questions, take that as an opportunity to see where you score in terms of the organization that you work within. And that first question I think is a really great one to get the ball thinking of, is the company as healthy as what I believe it to be? And then the second one here is, well then how are you actually measuring the success of those that are still there? And to me in the research world there's always this term of operational definition, so how do we operationally define something? Success is such an ambiguous term. You know, are you going to define success by how happy your customers are, how happy your employees are, how many of them stayed, how long have they stayed, what's their pay margin, whatever it might be. So I think there it's a question of, is it then where the company is actually defining and making it blatantly known, here's how we're going to define success, and here's how we're going to measure it.
So walk me through. So one, the response that they should be looking for one was what?
So if you had, for question number 1, let's say the stronger response was if you put a no there.
Okay.
If you put a no there, we'll give you a 1 point. If you responded yes, you deduct a point. And then at the end of these...
So add 1, deduct 1.
You got it. At the end of these questions, you can then see where your total is. And there's a nice little rankings chart at the bottom to see where you fall.
And again, I think, you know, and I compare to Europe on an ongoing basis because Europe does, you know, the type of accounting that is always looking at this cost of people lost. And I'm just amazed at how few people go in and just Google, you know, how do I figure out turnover? You know, what numbers do I have? And most people have these numbers. And there was a company that just came to us. They gave us the data about their turnover, and their turnover is 60%. Based on the data that we collected that was in direct correlation to just this configuration, this application, they had lost close to $3 million on turnover within a 12-month time frame. $3 million. So you're always saying my sales guys aren't effective enough. You're always saying that, you know, we need to add more. This is what, but you're never stopping and saying, what does a 60% turnover really mean?
Right.
What if we close that off 20 points? And how much more revenue would we be adding to our bottom line because of that? So again, I think that's a really, really great question. So what was the next one?
Well, and that's I think where it goes right into the question 3, and that this is more of a subjective question. You know, how well do you think you respond to this? For all of these types of questions, you'll see strongly agree, agree, disagree, and strongly disagree. There's a half a point denotion between each one of those. So just make sure you're scoring accordingly based on this. But what that question is asking, that my workplace population is highly engaged and understands their impact in the organization. Let's then bring it back to that first question, the turnover part. If we now have 60% turnover at that organization, how is those responsibilities now being absorbed by those that are retained there? Or what other now responsibilities does HR have to take over about filling these positions, interviewing these individuals, getting them trained? It's a fascinating impact now where that single person is now more job responsibilities that they have to do. They have more problems that they have to now tackle every single day. And the impact that they're having on the organization is now falling largely on them and the responsibility. It's a question of when will that person break?
Well, and not only that, is question number one even true? You know what I'm saying? Because if you're saying, okay, you know what, we do or don't have problems, but in 3 you're saying they're engaged, clearly that's kind of a schizophrenic response.
Right.
Are you really perceiving what's going on appropriately? And again, I think that's a big question. If you're having turnover, are you explaining away? Like we hear all the time, well, it's my industry.
Right.
Well, in this particular company that I mentioned to you, well, the industry standard is 25%.
Right.
So you are 35% above the industry standard. When you have a data point, you have to ask yourself, is it one you made up? I'm just putting it out there.
No, you're
Is
absolutely
it one that you absolutely made up? Or is there data on the real internet that supports this?
You're
Like
absolutely
salary.com or whatever the case may be.
And that is
Yeah.
important to realize. I mean, technically, all of these questions, there is a subjectivity component to it. And then that's just because of the nature of the media in which we're acting in right now.
Right.
We don't have the opportunity to go in and assess right now because we're not there in each of your different organizations.
But we should be.
We should be.
We should be.
But
See, that's one thing we're in agreement about.
you're absolutely right. And
Yeah.
I think that's where, if you really honestly answer this, I think you will see consistency across these questions. And that'll come
So
out. in the
but be
final.
mindful of that. As you're
But
looking
absolutely.
at your report,
Yep.
a lot of people take this.
It's very easy
Yep.
to say the answer that you hope it to be, but
Yep.
isn't necessarily the answer that you is accurately what's going on.
Do you really suck or are you great?
And in more or less
Yeah.
terms, you got it.
More or
Absolutely.
less, give or take.
And I think that's where, going to the next ones here, you see question 4, is it where you now are walking into a day-by-day basis where there's no order? There is nothing that's clear. We are not following our mission statement. The values are out of whack. And you're telling me something, but it's not really what I see you doing every day. Is it just a zoo, as you called it? And I think that's really, again, where you can see it all kind of stem from the first 3 questions that we asked. And that if I don't want to be here, I have more work that's put on me. I have the same hours a day, but 3 times the amount of work I have to do. It's a zoo.
Well, but again, it goes back to, a call we got this morning for a person who's a project manager, and it's always, owners calling and saying, but I want her to do this, and I want her to do that, and I want her to do this. And Jean went back and said, well, I sent you a prototype for that report in February.
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking February of 2017. So now we're heading towards October. You're saying that you were knowing that you were missing this document, this clarity, these specific measures of success in February. Now we're getting into October and you're doing a whole lot of complaining. You're just not doing a whole lot of stuff to fix it.
Right.
So again, I think, what we see within the confines of our research center is that most people go to work each day determined to make a difference. They have no idea what that difference is.
Right.
And does that difference change daily? Is that difference in their job description? All of those things by which, again, neurologically we can connect to. Or are we left to our own devices? And you know what? We'll do our best.
And that's, I think, where even question 5 is starting to get at that, in that, is it clear that what is expected of you as an employee? And as an owner, you might say, absolutely, how could you not think?
Oh,
How could you not know that?
absolutely, yes.
But this is where I go back to the blog that I had written, the post originally, and said, it's not your opinion that matters. It's the other individual's perception too. And that's really the view that we should be taking. And here, I think it would be really interesting to see that how are employees feeling in terms of their expectations? Are they blatantly known? Are they very clear? And I think that will be very interesting to see how that one comes out in question number 5.
Yeah, because again, from a breeding standpoint, it wants to have clarity. And if it is provided in writing, especially depending on what your behavioral style is, I'm coaching a director of HR and an HR manager at the same time. And when she called this morning to do her debrief, she said, oh my gosh, she's given me things in writing. She goes, I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. Now, the director of HR is awesome, but she talks a lot. So I'm confused, what's the priority? What should I, and then when I don't do the right priority, then you're yelling at me. So again, that clarity, and when you get to that vision in the mission and the behaviors, we've talked about this ad nauseum, are you living them?
Right. There's a difference between saying it versus then letting the actions speak to the goals and the values that you're putting out.
Exactly, yeah.
And I think that's where, so skipping 6 up certainly is relevant, but 6 and 7 really go hand in hand together in that how clear and how congruent are these messages that are being sent? And I think that's a really important question as the people listening to this answer, because it could be very, like you said, confusing for someone to walk in and day out thinking that they're doing exactly what they're supposed to, and then lo and behold, they're getting yelled at because they're not doing what was expected of them, but it wasn't made clear what those expectations were.
Mm-hmm. And again, I think when it comes to that, the people that we've interviewed that have been let go from a company, the employer is always adamant that that person is aware.
Mm-hmm.
Yet, certainly, we know that there's a shock factor and different things that affect people's ability to reason through this trauma. But again, it always makes me wonder, did they really know? Did they really know in a way that they could understand,
right,
that they could improve, that they could progress from? And I think in most instances, again, it's more in that form of that oral communication.
Well, and that gets right specifically to the 8th question that we asked. How is the communication happening in that organization? How much communication do you feel is actually coming from the top? And is it clear? Mm-hmm. Is it really speaking to the message of that organization? And I think that'll be really interesting to see how people respond with that one as well, and see how many points they kind of earn from that response.
And again, I think it's because when you look at the baby boomers and that particular generation, I mean, we were taught to keep things pretty close to the vest. You don't share everything with everybody.
Mm-hmm.
You really you don't want to tell them how we're doing. You don't want to take that information. But again, the more that we know about the brain and the clarity and the importance of that we have to get rid of that old-fashioned thought process. And when you're looking at best places to work, again, it is clear. It is understood what our goals are, long-term, short-term, and how I impact those goals.
Mm-hmm.
See, how I impact them is incredibly apparent. And when it is apparent, I feel so good about myself and the job that I'm doing.
And that's where you see it even here, the 10th question,
mm-hmm.
specifically saying, does the organization actually even provide you training to help you out with that? I mean, that's where I think the set of questions here is really great, and that it gets at another layer to this dynamic. So the first one's really more of like an awareness of what is it like? What's the landscape that you work in? And then some of these follow-up questions are starting to really get at, well, what are you now doing to provide this assistance, this lifeline, to be able to survive in that industry? Because again, as an owner, you're like, well, I provide everything. But if you're having people leave, how do you explain that?
Or if you're having people, again, not be able to contribute in a way through critical thinking and problem solving and
right.
all of those things. So again, if I'm a Stepford, if I'm just using an artificial intelligence type of methodology, well, then that's kind of as good as it gets, right? But how are you really developing? And is there just, again, a whole millennial thing where we're expecting these kids to go from college to career, and they should know what I know, and I've got 3 decades of experience. No matter how you whitewash it, that is an assumption.
Yep,
you went to college,
yep.
So you should know this stuff, because I didn't go to college.
Yep.
Well, you're here and now with 3 decades in this hard drive. So at the end of the day, that's something that, again, is your perception. And I think that could be a really interesting question, even for our next Facebook Live, is I would love people to have the courage to take this self-awareness, their own internal self-awareness, and compare it. Do a little own case study and give their counterparts or people they love self-awareness questions and see how they match. Because I'm telling you right now, in our research, they don't match. I mean, they're not even close. They're so far apart, it's ridiculous. But anyways.
Well, and some of these are actually starting to get at that. Does the employee understand their path to success? And is that what others feel there as well? And I think that's a really interesting set of questions that some of these are starting to get at. And I know that, very quickly here we start to come up on the amount of time that we're spending on this. There's one really question here that I think is fascinating to discuss, which is the question number 9. How much should a company be spending in dollars per employee a year? I mean, I obviously I do not own a company, and so this is where I always defer that understanding to a whole other population out there. But I understand it has to be really challenging to look at then how much revenue you're bringing in, and then to say, wait, I need to now spend that on the employees that got me there, it just doesn't add up. But yet we know from a research standpoint that for every dollar that you're spending on those employees, you're getting that much back and then some. So it's always in the best interest of an owner, a higher up, to invest that time. But it does become a question of when is it sufficient?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that, again, when you're talking about that, I know IT is the highest spending, and for other companies, they're talking about $1,400 per individual. Again, what we see in talking to employers that, again, tend to be more baby boomers or close to baby boomers, they're like, well, I didn't get that training.
Right.
I figured it out. We have a term here we call FITFO, and it's not for public consumption what that exactly means, but I think we could kind of do the math. The truth of the matter is, again, you did it, but it wasn't this dynamic, all right? It wasn't the skills shortage. It wasn't this new economy. It wasn't technology. It wasn't the constant change. Look at how you've changed your business model. Mm-hmm. And how have you changed your employee model? If we even compared your business model to your employee model, and Eric, when you look at those numbers, they're again saying that companies that are investing in these training organizations, they use Costco and BJ's as a prime example. Costco is supposed to be 2 to 2.5 times more profitable than BJ's based on the training, based on engagement. So you are talking major differences in profitability. When I look at my business crush Wegmans, I mean, how more profitable they are, compare it to a Tops. So you Google it and figure it out. And the amount of money that Wegmans spends on enhancing their people. So again, these things are just searches away. I mean, if this is the Joan and Eric show, and this is fake news, loved your blog, then you know what? We'd love to see that information.
Right.
But we are heavy into this math and science, and we get it's different. And that's why we talk about it so much. But boy, oh boy, do we have, if you prescribe to this brain-based methodology, because like I'm looking at, what makes a great place to work. It's organizations that have established this trust factor.
Okay.
Established status. How do I fit into this? Can understand their success in a clear way. These are all things that when we're looking at it, build camaraderie, take pride. These are all fundamentally Pavlov's theory for the workforce today. This is nutrition for people.
Right.
We've gone well past the food, although certainly important to have that, but we've gone well past that in companies, in great places to work. So I think that from an employer standpoint, if you have lines on the wall and you aren't living it, it's not fair, you don't have the credibility, respect, all of those things are the commonality that are really coming into these best places to work. And the way that you put these questions together, independent of even knowing what I know about business,
right,
it's all falling under the jurisdiction of those areas. So I would love for the people who filled out the form to really kind of be thinking about, are you falling in line with credibility? Is what a leader said happening? Mm-hmm. Is there this trust from the lowest to the highest level? Is there fairness? We see this a lot in family businesses. Well, Joey's kind of a goof off, but guess what? You're in 6 figures,
Right.
Do people take pride in what it is that they do? And have you built a team that, regardless of generation, because I can tell you, these best places to work have no generational distinction.
Right, right. And that's where I think that even some of the research really supports this too, in that organizations that really have spent and dedicated a sufficient amount of resources to train their employees. There's research that will even show that an employee that has received that amount of sufficient training will even pass off an offer to go someplace else, even if that other offer is more lucrative than where they currently work. Like, they want to be helped. They want to provide this assistance. It provides them the confidence that the employer is going to be building with me. And it's not just me going through this journey alone. And I think a lot of these questions are trying to get at highlighting that there's a lot of times where there's more pressures put on you, and it might be where one small decision that's made by an individual can lead to a wide range and long-lasting impact for that organization. But a lot of that could have been prevented if the training was there.
And so did we get the form online okay, you guys? Did we solve
We
it?
did.
Technical team?
Yes.
Technical team, thank you so much for solving that. So we do have that posted online. Anybody, you know, our summer classes, awesome, great success, putting people from diverse generations, from diverse companies in our research center. We have a small space, so we've gotten such great feedback. We're continuing in fall and winter. Anybody who wants to see what it is that we're doing, wants to attend a class, a new customer, this would have to fall under that jurisdiction. Please, you know, don't hesitate to go to our website. You can fill out an inquiry or a form. We'd be happy. I know our schedule is up on our website, so you can look at that and put in an inquiry. Hey, I'd love to understand more about this brain-based methodology and the way that you're, you know, really creating mindsets that are more conducive to business now and into the future. You know, don't hesitate to drop us a note with that.
Absolutely.
And I know that we're running well over our time together, but
Good.
you know, we're good. Thank you. So, any last thoughts? Any last parting words that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think the training, you know, we really did see a lot of success over the summer as we then went through that series. And I think one of the things that really comes out from these questions is that when that training is provided and that professional development is fostered, it allows you to have a team that's able to now overcome all the different challenges that we now face and all the new technology and all new information that comes out. And I think really that's where the training allows you to see these long-lasting benefits within the organization and really does lead to a lot of long-lasting benefits for all those involved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't, you know, it's again, you know, we profess that whole Carol Dweck. There's that fixed mindset and there's that growth mindset. We've got a lot of room to grow, but like any self-help and like any self-development, I need it.
Right.
I need to be unstuck.
And it starts with answering these questions. You know, you
Yep.
can see where you are at the very end of that document that's now posted. You can see that based on your point total, where do you fall? And I think if you fall anywhere within there, please talk to us, contact us. Those Mindset Matters series is a great opportunity to really see how you can then move up the ladder.
Yeah, and if you come after 8 a.m., we serve alcohol because it's 5 o'clock summer, right?
There
It
you
makes
go.
it easier. Not really. I don't want the liquor authority coming and hunting us down.
Yeah.
Our time today. We'll look forward to it, and we'll be Facebook Live again with you next month. Have a great day.